Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're diving into this really interesting project proposal.
Oh, cool.
It's called Aero Project, and it's all about vertical aeroponic gardens.
Wow. Very timely.
Yeah, and it's not just some like futuristic fantasy. This project is really grounded in some, pretty serious trends that are happening right now.
Yeah, for sure. Aero Project draws on some pretty intense sources, actually, like the Race for What's Left
Oh, wow.
and War Stars, to kind of highlight, how climate change and just like resource scarcity could really amplify
Yeah.
all these social and political tensions we're already seeing.
Right. And
Okay.
it's a pretty stark reminder, I think, that the way we produce food is
Yeah.
really intertwined with, global stability. It's
Right.
not just about,
Yeah.
far off hypotheticals either. The proposal cites this crazy statistic that nearly half of the world's habitable land
Wow.
is already dedicated to agriculture.
That's a lot.
And with a growing population and, climate change impacting traditional farming, the pressure on that land is
Yeah.
only going to increase.
Definitely. And I think we're already seeing the effects of all this stuff. Rising food prices,
Yeah.
disruptions in the supply chain, and
Yeah.
then, unfortunately, it all just kind of creates this breeding ground for misinformation
Right.
and people who want to exploit that for their own agendas,
Right. It's kind of like
Maybe.
what happened during the Dust Bowl.
Exactly. Or even more recently, like with all the political instability that stemmed from food shortages in certain regions.
Oh, for sure. So I'm sensing a pattern here.
Yeah.
It seems like this Aero project is trying to get ahead of the curve, offer a solution before these issues get even worse.
Precisely, that's what they're trying to do. And that solution they're proposing is vertical aeroponic gardens.
Oh, wow.
The system that's designed to be sustainable, resilient, and ultimately community-centric.
Yeah. Okay. So for those who aren't familiar, can you just break down what exactly aeroponics is and
Right.
why it's being touted as such a game changer?
Yeah. So in the simplest terms, aeroponics is growing plants without soil.
Oh, wow.
You're basically suspending their roots in the air and spraying them with this nutrient-rich mist.
Interesting.
And this allows for incredible efficiency in terms of water and nutrient use. Plus, you can create these perfectly controlled environments so you can grow food year-round.
Oh, wow.
Doesn't matter what the climate is outside.
So imagine fresh local produce, even in the middle of winter or in the heart of, a bustling city.
Yeah.
It's almost like we're talking about taking traditional farming and flipping it.
Yeah, and turning it on its head completely.
Completely on its head.
Yeah.
So let's zoom in on how Aero Project actually plans to achieve this.
Okay.
Their proposed system is built around this really innovative star shade design.
Right.
So picture this circular disc
Okay.
that can unfold from a compact cylindrical shape, kind of like origami, but for high-tech agriculture.
Interesting.
I'm looking at some of their early sketches and 3D models, and I gotta say,
Yeah.
it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, they're really cool.
It seems like each star shade is customized
Right.
to support different types of plants.
Right.
So they could potentially grow
Yeah.
a huge variety of crops.
That's the idea. And each star shade would also have sensors
Oh, wow.
to monitor the plant's needs, adjusting the nutrient mist accordingly.
That's so cool.
So they envision being able to grow everything from delicate flowers to hardy pumpkins,
Really?
all within these controlled environments. It's
That's
a
amazing.
fascinating blend of nature and cutting-edge technology.
Yeah, it does sound like a pretty radical departure from traditional agriculture. But realistically, how do they plan on making this happen?
Right.
Building these star shade discs, let
Yeah.
alone,
Yeah.
entire vertical gardens.
It
It just seems like a massive undertaking.
You're absolutely right, and the Aero Project team is fully aware of that.
Mm.
They've taken a very methodical approach, breaking the project down into these manageable sub-projects.
Okay.
So for now, their main focus is on developing a functional prototype
Got it.
of that load-bearing starshade disk.
So they're starting with the foundation,
Yep.
proving the concept before scaling up to those
Exactly.
towering vertical farms we see in their AI-generated images. It seems like a smart strategy for a project this big.
Yeah.
What about the technical challenges?
Right.
What are some of the hurdles they're facing
Sure.
in bringing this design to life?
Well, just creating a disk that can like unfold reliably and then hold the weight of a,
Yeah.
full-grown plant.
A mature plant.
That in itself is a huge engineering challenge.
Right.
They're exploring different materials,
Yeah.
looking for something that's lightweight, but also strong.
Yeah.
And the unfolding mechanism needs to be super precise,
Oh, yeah.
and durable.
I bet.
So yeah, lots of challenges there.
So getting that initial prototype right is crucial.
Yeah, it is.
But let's say they crack the code
Yeah.
on the Starshade design.
Okay.
How does Aero Project envision using these individual units
Yeah.
to create those large-scale vertical gardens?
Well, the idea is to like chain multiple star shades together to form this kind of vertical column.
Interesting.
And that could reach, several stories high.
Wow.
So imagine rows of these columns packed with all sorts of crops,
Yeah.
all thriving in a climate-controlled environment.
It's a pretty striking visual when you think about bringing this system into cities.
Right.
Could we see like abandoned warehouses or even skyscrapers turned into
Yeah, that's exactly the kind of
futuristic farm
application they're thinking about. And this isn't just about increasing food production.
Yeah.
It's about doing it sustainably and building more resilient systems.
Oh, sure.
Vertical farms could really reduce our reliance on traditional farmland.
Yeah.
And free up all that land for other uses.
And, if we can grow food closer to where people actually live,
Right.
we could shorten those supply chains,
Right.
reduce transportation costs, and people in cities would have a fresher, more reliable food supply.
And I think there's just a lot to be excited about here.
Yeah, there are so many potential benefits.
There are, but like any new technology, there are some potential downsides to think about too.
Right.
We really need to think critically about the energy demands of these systems.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And any unforeseen environmental impacts. And we have to make sure we don't accidentally create new forms of inequality.
Right. Or dependency.
Exactly.
You bring up a really important point.
Yeah.
While the idea of self-sufficient communities growing their own food year-round is appealing,
Right.
it could also create this reliance on the companies that provide the technology and expertise to maintain these systems.
That's a great question, and it's something Aero Project definitely acknowledges in their proposal. Okay. They emphasize open source tech and community ownership.
Oh, that's great.
So these systems can be adapted and maintained locally and not controlled by a handful of corporations.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But stepping back for a moment, I'm curious about the wider implications of this technology.
Okay.
You mentioned earlier how Aero Project draws on these books about resource conflicts, like the race for what's left and war stars.
Yeah.
If vertical farming takes off, how could that impact global power dynamics?
Well, right now, control over arable land and water resources is a major source of power on the global stage.
Yeah.
Countries that can produce extra food have a huge advantage over those that can't.
So you're saying that if we move toward a system where we can grow food anywhere, regardless of climate or traditional land resources, it could even the playing field?
Potentially, yes.
Wow.
Countries that have historically struggled with food security could become self-sufficient, reducing their reliance on imports or aid.
That would be amazing.
And the dynamics of international trade and political alliances could shift.
Yeah, that's a huge
big way.
Change.
Yeah.
It's almost like this technology could bring more stability and cooperation.
It's possible.
By reducing the competition for those essential resources.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thought and definitely a possibility. But it's also important to remember that technology can be a double-edged sword.
What do you mean?
Well, just because we can grow food more sustainably and equitably doesn't mean we will.
Oh, right.
There's always the risk that this technology could be used to concentrate power even more, or that it could create new forms of inequality.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
It seems like the challenge isn't just developing the tech itself, but making sure it's used in a way that benefits everyone.
Exactly. And that takes not just technical innovation, but also social and political innovation.
For sure.
We need to create policies and structures that ensure equitable access and sustainable practices.
So this isn't just a conversation about technology. It's a conversation about the future we want to create.
Exactly. And I think Aero Project, while focusing on a specific tech solution, also recognizes that broader context.
Okay.
They really highlight the importance of community engagement, education, and collaboration.
Yeah.
And they see all of that as essential for a sustainable and just food system.
It seems like the most exciting innovations aren't just about building new things, but about building them in a way that supports greater resilience, equity, and well-being for everyone.
I think you hit the nail on the head.
Okay, good.
Ultimately, technology is a tool.
Right.
And it's up to us to decide how we use it to shape the world.
And that brings us back to Aero Project and their vision for a future where food isn't a source of conflict or scarcity, but a foundation for stability and prosperity.
It's a compelling vision. Yeah. And whether this specific project works out or not, it's sparking a really important conversation about how we can use innovation to deal with the challenges of our time.
We've covered a lot here.
Yeah, we have.
From the details of the starshade design to the potential global impact of vertical farming.
It's a lot.
It's clear that this technology could be transformative, but it also raises some tough questions.
For sure.
About ethics, equity, and what kind of future we want.
Exactly. And those are questions we need to be thinking about now as these technologies are being developed.
So as we move into the final part of our deep dive, I want to shift gears a bit and talk about the potential impact of this technology on individual lives and communities. If vertical farms become commonplace, what might that look like on a more personal level? So imagine walking down the street and seeing this like abandoned building, right? But now it's teeming with life. And inside there are all these like vibrant green plants reaching up.
It's a really cool image.
That's the kind of transformation that Aero Project is going for. And it's not just about, you know, making things look pretty.
It's about access.
It's about bringing fresh, healthy food
to
communities that might not have it.
Like think about food deserts in cities.
Where it's hard to find affordable produce.
Vertical farms could like totally change that, create these hyper-local food systems where people can really take control of their food supply.
It reminds me of those community gardens that have been popping up, but like on a much bigger scale.
It's like community gardening 2.0.
Totally.
And because vertical farms can grow all kinds of crops, communities could really tailor their production to their needs and preferences.
Oh, that's interesting.
So you could support specific cultures or dietary needs.
It could be a way to preserve those food traditions. It's amazing to think that this tech could change how we produce food. But also like our whole relationship with it.
Big shift.
Like imagine kids growing up with vertical farms all around. They'd learn about sustainable agriculture and healthy eating from the start.
Could be a whole new way of thinking about food.
And for older generations, it could be a way to stay engaged, share their skill,
pass on that traditional knowledge.
And embrace new technologies at the same time.
It's a really cool mix of old and new.
And we can't forget about the economic benefits.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Vertical farms could create tons of new jobs in urban agriculture, tech maintenance, food distribution. It could revitalize these local economies.
And make communities more resilient.
It's about creating this more interconnected system, where food is part of our communities.
Woven into the fabric of where we live.
Not something that happens far away.
Out of sight, out of mind.
I think that's a key point.
It is.
We've lost touch with where our food comes from.
We have.
And that affects our health.
Definitely.
And our understanding of the impact of our choices.
Like the environmental and social costs.
Exactly.
Vertical farms could help us see those connections more clearly.
Make it all more tangible.
And encourage us to be more responsible.
So even though there are challenges and things to watch out for
sure,
this technology has the potential to do a lot of good.
I agree. And I think that's the message of Aero Project.
That
innovation, when it's guided by these values,
like sustainability and equity,
exactly, can create a better future for everyone.
I like that, a brighter and more resilient future.
That's the goal.
So to wrap things up,
I
want to leave our listeners with this thought.
All right.
We've talked about the potential of this technology, but it's important to remember that the future isn't set in stone. We shape it with the choices we make.
Every single day.
Individually and as a society.
Aero Project is just one example of how people are trying to solve these big problems.
And it's up to all of us to stay engaged.
To be part of the conversation.
To think critically about these technologies and to push for the kind of future we want.
That's how we make progress.
So keep exploring these ideas.
Stay curious.
Ask questions, challenge assumptions.
Don't be afraid to think differently.
And imagine the possibilities.
Because the future is in our hands.
The future of food and the future of our planet.
That's right.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.